Among other treasured beliefs, the First Amendment of the United States Constitution protects the right to freedom of speech. This includes the protection of the rights to freedom of religion and the freedom of expression from government interference. Freedom of speech allows the American people to express themselves freely without the constraint or obstruction of the government. Freedom of speech is one of the many things that define the United States as a democracy. Our people are free to express their thoughts, as they are also free to take action on their thoughts and beliefs as well. This sets us apart from so many other places around the world where their people aren't allowed to do what they want, much less even say what they want. The concept of free speech brings about one puzzling question. Are there limits to free speech? I recently read an article published in The New Yorker from May 2014 that made me wonder. Should pharmaceutical representatives be able to advertise non-FDA approved drugs to doctors? Should they be able to pitch drugs to doctors for off-label uses by their patients? According to this article, this is a First Amendment issue. The Food and Drug Administration is a government agency created to protect the health of the public by regulating human and veterinary drugs. It is one of the oldest extensive consumer protection agencies in the history of our federal government. Its starting days can be traced all the way back to 1848 to execute the chemical scrutiny of products from the farms. Although it wasn't known by its current name until the year of 1930, the FDA's regulatory functions commenced with the passing of the 1906 Pure Food and Drugs Act. This was a law that was a quarter of a century in the making, which prohibited interstate business in misbranded and contaminated food and drugs. Since then, it has been testing and regulating our drugs before they're officially on the market to assure the safe use by consumers. Do you think that doctors or pharmaceutical representatives should be allowed to advertise drugs for uses other than their purposes on the labels? Well, technically, they are allowed to do so in a way. Pharmaceutical reps have a right to commercial speech. Commercial speech protects businesses and their rights to advertise freely. In order for a content-based regulation of commercial speech to be valid, it must only withstand immediate investigation. Also, any commercial speech that is misleading or false is not entitled to protection by the First Amendment and can be prohibited. The article I chose discussed the conflict between medicine and free speech. You would think that because of commercial speech, that pharmaceutical representatives should be able to recommend or advertise drugs to doctors for uses that aren't stated on the label, but it turns out they can't. When the FDA approves a drug, it bans pharmaceutical companies from promoting off-label uses of drugs to doctors. These companies and their lobbyists feel that this policy violates the First Amendment. According to this article in The New Yorker, the Assistant Commissioner for Policy at the FDA, Leslie Cux, suggested that the FDA is reconsidering their rules. But why is this even an issue in the first place? Well, even though they should have the right to commercial speech, they may be banned from advertising drugs to doctors for off-label uses because some may see this as being unethical. I happen to agree. Just because a drug may have worked for an off-label use for a few thousand people doesn't mean that it can't cause severe side effects for another few thousand more. The FDA was created to protect our people and to assure that the drugs we are given are safe and work effectively. I feel that if these said off-label uses were so effective, they would have been already on the label. If pharmaceutical reps do discover another use for a drug, it should be tested, scrutinized carefully for any harmful side effects, and then approved for its new uses. If not, then what is the purpose of the FDA? Free speech is definitely a great attribute of our country, but there also has to be some lines drawn when the well-being of people is potentially at risk.